Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan for an Inside the Birds presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. And wow, Adam, I say wow because, man, like we put out a pod going into free agency saying the Eagles will be aggressive in free agency. Trust us. We know this. We're told this. We sense this. We vibe this. And even the first week goes by, we do a pod, or the first few days, we do a pod and we talk about all the signings. And then here we are again. And the signings now reach 9 players. Some
Yeah.
of them, I shouldn't say signings, I'll say acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
Because the trade market all of a sudden
Yes.
became involved. We'll get into that. And this is not just an aggressive offseason. This is what I called for our Discord members. It's like an offseason on steroids for
Yeah.
Howie Roseman. But we said this was coming. It did. The Eagles added some players that we said that they would be keen on going into the free agent period. And I'm really looking forward to this episode, especially in baseball. There's a term when the team is hitting well, they call it running to the bat rack. Like everybody wants to get to
Yeah.
the plate. And I wanted to run to the microphone to do this podcast with you because we have such great intel on a lot of these acquisitions, why they happened, how they happened, and the expectations. And then we're, like we did last time, I think we've got to debunk some narratives about some guys and give
Yeah.
the best intel we can get so
Yep.
everybody can really be informed.
Yeah. We'll go inside every decision. We're going to go over kind of what we heard, why they did it, the execution, talking to other teams, what they had heard. It's really interesting because they talk, a lot of guys around the league talk to the Eagles or talk to agents and whoever. And every once in a while during the week, something came up. I'm like, whoa, okay, really? Okay.
Right.
Then I'm like, all right, I need to run this by some people around the league and see if you heard this. Oh yeah, they're on that quarterback. I'm like, man, that was probably my biggest takeaway. Is this is our eighth season? I think seventh or eighth, 18. Yeah, yeah. It's something like seventh or eighth, seventh, whatever the hell it is. Anyway, I've never seen them being on more number two quarterbacks since we've started the show. This is just incredible.
Yeah.
Folks, there's some stuff that we're going to talk about today. A lot of people don't realize. It's like, I don't know what was on their checklist, but it's kind of like, okay, let's look into this. This didn't work. Oh, we don't want to do that. Let's go to the next guy, the next guy, the next guy, the next guy. Whereas last year, as we reported, it was Andy Dalton one, Mariota two. They got Mariota. So this year was different. Oh my, I mean, they were on so many quarterbacks here. So obviously, there's different levels of interest, but the bottom line is they really checked into it. And look, there's no team. You go back to Nick Foles, obviously. And then when they drafted Jalen Hurts to be once it's backup, who the hell knew?
Yeah.
So you can never knock them for looking at the quarterbacks. I mean, they're just really good at it.
Yeah, and listen, they tell you that's what they do, so nobody should be surprised. They
Hmm.
tell you that they are aggressive at this position. They shocked us all with the Jalen Hurts pick and a couple of years ago, and they explained it. Explained it that they're different from other teams, and they continue to be in that regard. So we'll get into that a little bit in
Yeah.
this episode. There's also a bigger picture takeaway, Adam, I had that I think we're going to have to get to. I mean, further get into after free agency is done as we get closer to the draft because 9 acquisitions in the first week of since the start of the legal tampering period to me and I have to go back and look. This might be a team record for how many acquisitions in the first week alone of free agency. And I thought to myself, 9 is so much for a team that didn't even lose that many players per se. And I thought to myself, why? What is it about like all these players coming in? And then you kind of look at the roster, right? And the areas that had so many holes, especially on defense. And then you realize a lot of this is the result of some really substandard drafting over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if it stands out to people that the Eagles have had some really rough drafts the last couple of years because a guy like Jalen Hurts can save a draft because he becomes a starting quarterback who takes you to a Super Bowl. But that draft hurt them. 2019 draft really hurt them. We're talking about Dillard,
Yeah.
Miles Sanders. Was Arthega-Whiteside that draft too?
Yeah. 19 second round. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 2019 draft, they had about only 5 players, and really none of them other than Then Sanders, who's not even with the team, worked out. 2020, other than Jalen Hurts, not a lot of guys
Man,
really
yeah,
worked out. And so now 2022 still too soon, but 2021 also has a
really
bunch
good,
of guys.
great,
Well, it's
great.
great because you hit on Devontae Smith, Dickerson, and Williams is pretty good, but your
Yeah.
next six guys, none of them have really. McPherson was hurt.
Yeah,
Gainwell's been
if you get
okay.
three right, let me just tell you, if you talk to personal people, if you get three
I
right,
know the three.
yeah,
I know the rule, but
it's pretty
like
good.
I feel
Yeah,
like you
pretty
need to
good.
get more than three if your last two drafts only got you
Mm.
one combined. You got to get a little bit more than that.
You hope. Well, no,
But
because
yeah,
on your point, obviously you have holes and you in their position after 2020, that's where you're going. I get it. That was
yeah,
such a bad draft. Other than Hurts, who I don't want to say lucked into, they got it right, but
right.
they didn't draft him to be a starter. It was just, you know what's funny? I, I'm pretty certain of this. No other team has tried that, drafting a quarterback in the second round to be a backup.
Mm,
Well, the Steelers probably should have not. They probably should have drafted him in the first. Kenny
right.
Pickett. We'll get into that from our sources on the intel on that one. But yeah, you're right, man. It was a crazy week. I just wanted to caution people though, when we did our last Monday morning show, like they're going to try to be aggressive. But I used the Byron Jones situation. It wasn't Howie's fault. He actually went over market. He wanted him so badly. He tried, and he did a great job talking to people involved. It just you can't have everything you want sometimes. So you can't hurt someone for trying. And as it turned out, let's leave the injury aside. He wasn't quite what the Dolphins were thinking. Like they tried him as a safety, a move around chess piece player, but he wasn't quite living up to that elite status for that contract. But nevertheless, that's look that and on the nine players, what's interesting was all different type of players. Yes, they
Hmm.
got probably four starters and a bunch of backups who may or may not contribute a lot. Like that's the thing here. As we'll get into the show in a minute, it's very interesting to see the process here, which will explain it. It wasn't just okay. Well, the Eagles are going to sign a bunch of backups or a bunch of starters. They kind of split it up.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Three stack linebackers is an interesting. Although we'll get into
Yeah,
more on that.
you think?
But yeah, I mean, listen, they needed it. And listen, there
Yeah.
are still, as we'll talk about in this podcast, there are still players, or I'm sorry, positions that the Eagles have to be looking at right now. We know that they're looking at because there are still bodies that are needed at certain positions. We'll get into. I like how you channeled your inner Mick Jagger over there when you said that how he can't always get what he wants, but he definitely got a lot of the players that he wanted so far, and the Eagles they are patching holes left and right. And so if week two is as exciting as week one, which I don't think it can be, but if
No.
the
Well,
we're at the point here, Adam, with nine, if you add a couple more, we may have to do in honor of the NCAA tournament coming up. We may have to start seeding all the acquisitions and do a little fun tournament, like which pitting like Saquon Barkley as a one seed and
okay.
Huff might be a one. Yeah, we might have
Oh,
fun with that.
I would say right. I would put Huff as a number 4 seed.
A four? Wow. Who would be a two and a three?
No, but I'm just saying overall, where would if you were comparing, it
Uh-huh.
wasn't like I knew you were going to talk about this, but
Uh-huh.
Barkley has, let's put it this way, the potential to be a number 1 seed because he's still gifted. That hasn't left him.
Right.
You worry about what happened last season, injuries. We talked about this last week, but moving forward here, Devin White, I'd have him as a fifth, sixth seed. He has a potential to
Mm.
be a 3 seed. You know what I mean? Or
He's a
the
five that
potential.
can get upset by a 12, in my
I was
opinion.
just going to say, right, 5-12. I was going to talk about how he has a chance to go a couple rounds, but he also could get knocked out in the first round because that's the last 2 years for him, particularly what we were told 2 years ago that was the start of the regression, and then last year the bottom completely fell out.
Yeah.
We'll get more into that because I know you got some great stuff on him, and just to clear something up, I know people are saying we're being a little negative. I saw some stuff in social media, but then I see some other people backing us up and saying they're just telling the truth. That's the point, the latter.
Yeah.
We're here for you to learn. We're not. Sometimes it's going to be negative. It's the truth. Like for instance, when Greg first started work with us years ago, Greg would get ripped left and right from people on our YouTube comments. After a series of years, people wave the white flag. They stop getting on Greg's case. They're like, man, he knows what he's talking about because he's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And they
mean,
love Greg.
yeah, the tape
They
doesn't lie.
adore Greg. People adore
Right.
Greg. So
Yeah.
anyway,
As Greg always says, the tape doesn't lie. It's just
yeah,
what the tape shows. It's nothing
yeah.
personal.
And we give context. You can't get context on social media. It's impossible. People want instant gratification, negative or positive. We're here to give you, in addition to everything else we're talking about in today's show, we're going to give you some context of why certain things happen, why certain guys struggled, why guys did better than they expected, and so forth.
Excellent. Great segue. Speaking of Greg Cosell, our next show with him, the Intel with Greg Cosell, will drop tomorrow. It'll drop on Tuesday, sometime either well, it'll be out sometime Tuesday, probably
Okay.
late morning, early afternoon, and that will be a recap of a lot of the Eagle signings that they've made. Yeah, we'll get all of his breakdowns on the signings and his
Yep.
expectations. We'll try to wedge a few other signings too. I think some signings in the division have been really interesting in the
Oh
NFC
yeah.
East. So we'll get his impression on that. And then the week after that, we get right into NFL draft preview episodes with Greg for the Intel with Greg Cosell. So looking forward to that. That'll be out again Tuesday. Keep updated on InsideTheBirds.com. Please bookmark it. Andrew DeCecco's been writing stuff. Our great intern Ben Paul has been doing all the updates. I've been doing updates. A lot of great stuff on InsideTheBirds.com. And got to give a shout out, Adam, to Tony. He's one of our Patreon members who's sort of
Ah,
famous because he is claims, at least I believe him, that he's a relative of CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, Tony did not make our great Ask ITB live stream last week that had about 30 people on it. And everybody wanted to know where he's at because, we were looking for the intel from a family member, but he did go on the Discord channel and update everybody on the family situation and everything like that. So thanks to Tony for being active on Discord. And this is what's so great about being a Patreon member. You get intel from Adam and I, but you also get intel from relatives of Eagles who just happen to be Patreon members and ITB members as well. So it's a great deal. Patreon.com/inside the birds. I believe we have a couple of new members I wanted to thank as well. So as people, Eric, there are two Erics and a CJ that have hopped
hmm.
on in the last few days. So thanks to them. Really appreciate it. And we will do our next Ask ITB live stream next Wednesday, which will probably be right. Is that what we're doing?
24th. Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
actually the 24th. And then I've got my chat this Wednesday, 2 days from now at 8 Eastern. Although it's funny, so I've been in there every day for like a week. So we're having these great conversations. And we're dropping a lot of information well before it happens. Go, here's what they're looking at. Here's what's probably going to happen, or at least it has a chance to happen. And it's been good. Yeah, it's been fun. We're
Yeah.
camping out there, and I got to give these guys a shout out because what they're doing is they're aggregating. They're just taking everything off X and they're posting it in there quicker than the aggregators. They're like these 5 or 6 guys around the country who just aggregate information. I don't know what they do for a living. I don't know how they make money, but they're good at it usually. But the guys in our Patreon are it's great. They're putting it there, and we're discussing it after it's out. We're having discussions. I pop in there a couple times a day, and sometimes I stay there for like 45 minutes. It's great.
Yeah, it's a great community that we've built here on Patreon. So InsideTheBirds.com. I'm sorry, Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. All right, we got to get into these acquisitions. And I'm going to have to keep saying acquisitions because they're not all signings. So I have to remind myself to do that. We'll do that in a second. Let's first pause to hear a word from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, let's get right into it. The Eagles making, just splash after splash. Obviously, the quarterbacks always get the most attention. The Eagles make a deal, Adam. They trade for Kenny Pickett, who had a very strange exit from Pittsburgh. Like they bring in Russell Wilson. It's originally it's supposed to be a competition. Then it's not a competition. It's going to be Russell's thing. And, obviously the Steelers also had their eyes on Justin Fields, right? And that makes Pickett available. He wants out and he becomes an Eagle. What do you think about in general? Let's just talk about the compensation here because they get Kenny Pickett and a 4th-round pick, right, from the Steelers for a 3rd-round pick, which is, and I believe a conditional 7th rounder. They kind
Two
of
of them
called it a
actually.
pick swap, right?
Yeah, they actually gave up 2 7th rounders. One of them is from Atlanta. The
Right.
other one is from them. Yeah, so they moved up 22 spots. The Eagles got the Rams, 2024 fourth rounder. And then, yes, the Eagles gave up their third rounder, 98, which was just a comp pick, by the way. It's a comp pick at the end of the round.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the deal with Kenny Pickett. He wanted out. One thing you should understand and why they were more motivated to move him is because Omar Khan did not draft him. This was Kevin Colbert's last draft. That was 22, and he drafted Pickett. Well, yeah, Omar took over after that draft. So look, it didn't work. It didn't work for them. They signed Wilson, obviously, to be their starter. Pickett wasn't happy, and he wanted out. And look, they didn't have to do it, but they found what they thought was good compensation. And then the amazing thing was their Justin Fields trade, where they gave up next to nothing. So think about how the Steelers have reshaped the room. They had Pickett and Mason Rudolph. Now I've got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I mean, I think it's a little better than it was before.
You would say so. Now,
Yeah.
so when they traded Pickett to the Eagles,
Yeah.
I was talking with a Steelers source that I know, and I said, listen, I respect the Steelers way, but you know, did you guys watch Russell Wilson last year? You know, and you know, because I know what the numbers say on Russell Wilson, but I watched that offense last year, and he was a totally different quarterback than 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, almost afraid to throw it unless a guy was wide open. And they ran the ball first, second down, and only would put him in third and manageable situations. But the response I got is, we know who Russell Wilson is. Don't worry, Omar has a plan. That's what he kept saying. Omar has a plan. So I didn't understand what the plan was until the trade for Justin Fields. So should be interesting there, what happens in Pittsburgh. And they definitely had a plan. Now, let's move forward. Kenny Pickett with the Eagles. For those people, some people are not happy about it, and they think it's a little bit of an overreach on Howie's part. But if you just take away like the draft picks and stuff, I mean, they're going to have picks and they're going to maneuver. The price you pay for a first round pick quarterback who gets a new environment, you know, I'm not going to say it's going to make him any better. He's just in a new environment, right? The price you're paying for Kenny Pickett on these last 2 years of his deal would be far less than what you might have paid Marcus Mariota last year, right?
Any of them, Flacco,
Anybody, yeah.
yeah, they were in on at least a half a dozen quarterbacks. So yeah, in fact, his salary is only 985,000. He is which is fully guaranteed. He has a fully guaranteed roster bonus for training camp, which is due the third day of training camp, 998,000. So he's owed less than $2 million in cash this season. Cash and cap are exactly the same because the Steelers handle the proration of the signing bonus, and they're responsible for paying it. So that's that. And then next year, his base salary of $2.623 million is fully guaranteed. That's it. So they've got him under team control now for 2 years. Very well cost control. Like, this is super cheap. Now we could argue whether he should have been a first pick or a round pick or not by the Steelers. Not most teams did not have a first round grade on him, but they did, or Kevin Colbert did, in particular because he made the call. But look, this guy's got gifts. He ran more in college at Pitt. He's got some athleticism. So here's the book from our sources. Had a terrific offseason last year. OTAs were really good. Training camp was really good. The preseason was really good. The Steelers play their starters. They're one of the few teams that really play them a lot. Whereas I was there for 2 days, so I saw with my own eyes because I had my criticisms of Pickett. But talking to people there, they were really excited. They're like, wow, the light's coming on. Let's see. Let's go. And then the regular season started. And here we go again. Off season, minor leagues, regular season, major leagues. He struggled mightily, to say the least. Matt Canada's offense was college-like, but it was not a bad scheme, to be honest with you. He got fired in season. Mike Sullivan took over the play calling, who now got reassigned, and they have a new Tom Arthur's their new quarterbacks coach in Pittsburgh. But Kenny struggled, and they knew he couldn't be the starter going forward. And in fact, what bothered him, they were supposed to open up the competition before they traded him, and he just wasn't happy the way the thing went down. Everyone and their mother knew that Wilson would have won it. There's no way he wouldn't have won it. And the scheme's going to change a little bit there in Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, though they're going to be really run based, which is what they want. But it didn't work. They gave up on him. Got okay compensation, but as far as the Eagles are concerned, cost-controlled quarterback we're going to have for 2 seasons. There you go, and McKee will be the 3.
Yeah, I think you have the same question that we had last year with Mariota. Is that, you're now removed from Gardner Minshew, a guy who you felt played with the type of confidence and competency to win you games if need be as a backup quarterback. Now I know he lost the 2 games in his last year against Dallas and New Orleans, but the year before that he beat the Jets. He just gave you a level of what you were comfortable with. He would be able to run the offense. He would generally make good decisions. Last year when they acquired Mariota, we said, I don't know, like if you go look at the tape of Atlanta, it wasn't very good. I think in fairness, you would say the same thing about Pickett here, and you would wonder if Jalen Hurts was going to get hurt for 2, 3, 4 games and Kenny Pickett goes in. Do you feel as comfortable as you once did when you had, Gardner Minshew, or when you had Jalen Hurts backing up Carson Wentz? I don't know. I just that this is a position where the Eagles say they want, to be able to win games with their backup, and they value the backup, but they're putting in a guy who, yes, he's got 2 years of experience, but it didn't go so great. So it's a little bit of a bank on the coaching, bank on the environment, and see if you can get the upside out of him if you have to. You never know.
One more thing is there's a feeling around the league that this offense will be good for Pickett because it's super quarterback friendly. It's a spread, but it's a good spread and it works. The quarterbacks have flourished in here in this scheme, so we'll see. Look, you don't know until you get there. Doug Nussmeier, who worked with Kellen Moore with the Chargers, those guys will be responsible for developing this quarterback. Because look, if Hurts gets hurt, I give Jalen credit for playing with that knee issue that he had for several weeks last season. They got to get Pickett ready here. And we know McKee doesn't move very well. Like Pickett's pretty mobile. McKee doesn't move very well, but he's got a gun. He's got a much stronger arm than Pickett. So we'll see what happens. But it's interesting. And as we reported last week, in fact, you pointed out something to me that I didn't even see with Easton Stick. Literally within seconds after the Pickett story broke, Easton Stick was reported to be resigning with the Chargers.
Yeah,
because he was one of the finalists for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny, but look, obviously they had the one more thing, and the Eagles had much higher grades on Pickett than they did on Stick, so you understand that. But that was the draft. That doesn't mean so much now. It's all about redevelopment of this quarterback and getting him right. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't remember reporting this 2 years ago because it didn't matter. The Eagles weren't going to draft the quarterback and not get. I don't think they were going to Kenny Pickett, but I do remember being told that Howie Roseman liked Kenny Pickett a lot coming out of Pitt. And this sort of feels like the Saquon Barkley thing. Now you have a chance to get him, go get him. Although it appears that Howie was really going after a backup. He was aggressive to just try to get a young, I won't even say young, just he kind of had an interesting selection of backups he was looking at Adam.
Yeah, so actually he looked at Flacco. They made an offer, but Joe signed with the Colts. And they looked at the trade market. They was told by a league source that they looked into Desmond Ridder. They looked at other quarterbacks. Like I said, at least a half dozen quarterbacks. Since we've done the show, I don't remember them being on so many number 2 quarterbacks, but they were, as we understand it. But they got Pickett here, and we'll see how it works out. And that as we're doing offense at this part, then we'll do defense, and we'll go over some of the extensions as we know it. But that was an interesting one. That Pickett transaction. I know people weren't sure what to think on social media because there's been a lot of negativity with Pickett. But sometimes, you know what? Sometimes a change of scenery could do a guy good. And everything we've heard about this Kellen Moore scheme is pretty good. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. So Pickett was basically the 5th offensive player that the Eagles added during this period. The other 4 being Saquon Barkley, Devontae Parker, Matt Hennessy, and I'm sorry, no, he's the 4th. So it's those 3, Barkley, Parker, Hennessy, and Pickett being the 4th. We did talk about Barkley in the last pod, right? We went over the big splash, and again, Howie really liking him, explaining him. Is Saquon Barkley going to be a 3-down linebacker? That's the goal when you pay a guy that money. We did talk about some of his issues in pass protection, but you got to think he's going to get that opportunity to be on the field as much as possible, right?
I would say, yeah, obviously at worst he'll split it. And if you're on Patreon, you've seen these numbers. We'll just sum it. We put the contract stuff. As soon as we get contract stuff, we let our Patreon people see it and we break it down for them so it's easily to understand. But we'll summarize it here. 3 years, 37.75 million, 24.5 million fully guaranteed. And then there's that I don't know why in the third year there's 1.5 million fully guaranteed. That won't keep him on the roster if he's not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Teams are going to cut a player. If a guy's struggling, 1.5 million fully guaranteed will not matter at all. It's simply performance. It's performance based, bottom line. But it's just got a 2-year structure, an amazing 2-year structure. And this is a guy they were in love with for that 19 draft, and they got him years later. We'll see. Look, Gainwell, Nick Sirianni's in love with this kid. I mean, everybody has their criticisms of Kenny. It's been a good story development as a 5th-round pick. There's no question they've got great value out of him, making that another guy from the 21 classes. Look, that was a good class for them, but he's not quite the explosive playmaker we thought he was. That has not happened. Mm-hmm. And that's where Barkley comes in, and Kenny could play on third down, so could Barkley. We'll see. We'll see. That to me is, in terms of how they, and here's another one for you. Who's the hurry up back? Because Gainwell's been their hurry up back. 2-minute, 4, you name it, he's been in it. That is something we'll have to look into. You would think Barkley for what they're paying him.
Yes.
But Gainwell's a guy they've had a lot of trust in. And then here's the other thing, because we don't know how Kellen Moore doesn't know these players. He never worked with them. How does Kellen Moore think, about
yeah, no, it should be pretty interesting, I would think. I mean, you pay Barkley that money, you want him to be on the field when it counts. So do you think Barkley serves as if let's say they're up by 17 points in the fourth quarter, does Barkley get the majority of the count? Or do they say, you've done yourself enough, you've got a nice couple of 5 or 6 dynamic runs, we're going to go let Kenny finish this one?
Well, Greg, when I was talking to Greg, and he's made this clear, he despite Barkley's size, he's not a grinded out back. He's not that physical. That's the thing that the tape shows, and he's not the only one person to tell me that around the league. So Gainwell's been why did I call him Grindwell? Because that's what he does. He grinds out carries. He could do that. He's shown that. I know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays bigger than his listed size, which is a scouting term. Now, they have 4 backs. Ty Davis-Price and Lou Nichols. We expect him to have 1 more back by training camp. You need to have 5. It's for training camp. It's hard to go through training camp with the Heat and preseason with just 4 backs, particularly why would Barkley play in the preseason? Why would you take that chance? So that's a good question. That will be, again, the contract would tell you he should be on every down, but you don't want to wear the guy down particularly with his injury history. It's a good point. Well, there's no way to know that. He's going to be on obviously some passing downs. It has to be to justify the contract. Whether he's on, are they going to split it? Is it going to be on passing downs? Is it going to be Barkley 2-1, 3? The split that they'll figure out.
Got it. All right, Devontae Parker, the last time we did the pod, had not technically been released by the Patriots, but all the paperwork's been filed. Patriots have been really aggressive at wide receiver this offseason, right? And Devontae Parker becomes free agent, and the Eagles sign him up. But they are only on the hook for how much of it? Like
I don't have the breakdown yet. I don't have that yet.
Okay, we have to wait for that. But the reports are that it's only like 1 point something million. So obviously we'll have to see the structure of that and what's guaranteed. But that the point remains the same, is that he's an outside receiver, and
only
the Eagles needed depth there. So it makes sense to bring in that guy, but they still need a number 3 slot receiver that they have not yet filled.
Sirianni, he calls them inside and outside receivers. They don't really believe so much in the slot position, just so we're clear here. They're not like your typical. Now, although I should say, let's see what Kellen Moore does. See, that's the thing. He had the great Keenan Allen, who refused to take a pay cut because Keenan was like, "Hey, I had the best year of my career. I'm not taking a pay cut." So 23 million total. He's like, "I'm not getting a pay cut." And then he was traded to the Bears. But that's a point, though. We don't know how Kellen Moore. We'll look into this. What he thinks about the slot position. Now, the Eagles still have no depth at receiver. Parker, he has a major injury history. He's clearly a fading player at 31 years old, a lot of lower body injuries. He's only been on IR once, but he's missed time and his body's been beat up. He's a guy that destroyed the Eagles. What was it, 2019? He had this one crazy Garrett game with Miami.
Yep.
Yep.
I forget, it was like 3 touchdowns I think he had in the game.
It wasn't the picket fence. One of the picket fence games. I hate to bring that up. Yeah, it might have been. Yeah. So anyway, Yeah, they don't have a 4 or 5 right now, so they have work to do there. And look, again, we're only in the second week for agency. They have until training camp to figure this out. It's not a priority. They have to do it. They know that. It's not a secret. They have 6 guys who are just back of the end of roster guys who have to prove themselves. So we'll see what happens there. But no, the guy's long. He's 6'2 plus. Guy's a former first-round pick. We'll see what he has. But I would agree. I would agree, though, they have to have someone at least could play inside when they add a 4 or 5.
100%. All right. And on the offensive line, we mentioned they did agree. They signed the center guard, Matt Hennessy, to a 1-year deal, a Temple kid, started his career with Atlanta, did have some starts for the Falcons. He wound up getting benched, though. Or
Yep,
was he supposed to be didn't he sort of get a starting job because they needed him at the moment, and then he wound up getting benched? But I don't know that when they drafted him, you'd have to ask the Falcons if they felt definite starter.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was they cross-trained him to play both guard and center. And I don't think teams going back to that draft saw him as a guard. Decent athleticism, but from what we understand, Stout absolutely loved him for that draft.
Mm.
So that's a big reason why he's there. Because look, he's got his own scheme, and he thinks Hennessy could make it. You know, everything. I mean, every offensive lineman is filtered through Stout. And although it's the GM's call, he'll make the decision in the end whether they sign the player or trade it for anybody. So as we said on last Monday's show, look for them to sign a guard/center, not someone who can play only one position. So that's where they're at with Hennessy. Now, here we go. Their offensive line backups. Fred Johnson's their backup left. Clark could play right or left. Raven Clark is back again. He could play guard if they need to. He's played guard before, but he's really too long to play that.
He ain't making the team, but go ahead.
All right. We'll see. Your boy Brett Toth is back again.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably could use one more guy at some point. Oh, Darian Kennard, I know you talked about. You had some good intel on him a couple weeks ago. We'll see if he could make the team, but they probably could use one more guy. And I know Jack Driscoll, we were told, is looking to compete for a starting job elsewhere. Wouldn't rule out bringing him back, but if they can't find what he wants, I'm sure they bring him back because he actually, he developed a little bit as a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then this is a position where the Eagles like to draft anyway, so you can imagine some other guys will be in after the draft to compete at those spots. So that rounds up the offensive additions so far for the Philadelphia Eagles. They have also had some extensions. The Landon Dickerson one, we talked about this last pod, and I think we did get some response. Did the Eagles make a mistake? Is this too much money for a guy who has an injury history? And I feel like we sort of say this every time. Like this is the Eagles mantra. And there are going to be some times where it doesn't work. You can point to Carson Wentz and say it didn't work when they gave him the extension. He regressed. Yes, there's some risks involved, but the price you pay now for Landon Dickerson is far, far less what you would pay, especially since he doesn't have a 5th-year option as a 2nd-round pick at this time next year when he's got 1 foot into free agency and crazy teams. Who's this year's Jaguars? Who gave? Oh, the Titans. The Titans giving Calvin Ridley how much money? $29 million? Something crazy like that?
And honestly, I don't think no, it was 22, but
I'm sorry, 22. Yeah,
they were not like I could tell you, talk to people involved. That money came way higher than some people expected. He's a nice player, but he missed the year a couple years ago, obviously for the gambling situation. So anyway,
but that's my point. Is all it takes is one team.
Yep.
To just, especially for a good young ascending player like Landon Dickerson, and guards are starting to get some good paydays. You saw the Rams pay their guard. They paid their own guard Dotson, right? Then they signed who is it? Jonah Jackson in free agency.
Yeah.
Love those moves, by the way. It's a shame that Aaron Donald called it quits. Although congratulations to.
Oh yeah. Oh my God! And although they couldn't get him, Chip, because he was drafted way before the Eagles were picking in 14. That was the draft was supposed to be Brandon Cooks, and they got Marcus Smith. But Chip was not a fan because of the arm length.
Well,
yeah. Now, I just remember hearing, this is 9 years ago, but it wasn't like Chip didn't think he was a great player, but Chip was really big on certain parameters. We would laugh. Remember the wrist thing. Measuring wrist size.
Measuring wrists and knees, yes.
Right.
In the middle of an interview.
What's that?
In the middle of a prospect interview. Hey, let me just get your knees here. I just want to,
I remember on the Senior Bowl, they were measuring a guy's wrists with going up the escalator to the second floor on your point. So anyway, the garden market, is exploded. So Dickerson gets 21 million a year. The one one of the best contracts in free agency has got to be Kevin Dotson, who was benched in Pittsburgh. They would have cut him if they couldn't have traded him. He played out of his mind and got 16 million a year. This guy is like an average player, but the Rams typically, I hate to say overpay. They're very generous to their players. I'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
As you said, Jonah Jackson got 17 million, and he was looking for I heard he was looking for close to that before the season started. So I'll give his agent credit, Billy Connolly, who played for the Bills, by the way, credit. That's a great contract. And you're right. Look, and then Steve Avila, who's also with the Rams.
Good
I'll be
pick.
interested to see what I'll be very interested to see what they do with him because he's a stud.
Yeah, they're going to move him to center.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, exactly.
And they are going to run so much duo and inside zone, which, by the way, they started doing last year instead of their, because McVay and Shanahan are outside zone guys. They switched it up, and that's why Kyron Williams became such a good inside runner for them. And now they've got three enormous athletic guys in the middle. They're just going to duo teams right up the middle. They'll probably add a running back knowing them, and that'll be interesting to see. They'll keep Stafford pretty well protected.
On your point about the guards, this is just ridiculous. And no offense to Robert Hunt, nice player, formerly Dolphins.
That was my point. Yep.
That I just cannot believe. I understand that the Panthers had a ton of cap and cash to spend. I mean, Robert Hunt got paid. I mean, great job. I believe it's Joe Panos, former Eagles guard, who did this contract. You can't be 20 million a season. I almost fell over. Like, oh my.
It almost makes
said,
Landon Dickerson a steal now at 21
right.
million.
I mean, he's a better
year.
player. Right. No offense to Robert Hunt. He's not. Landon Dickerson, for all we talk about his injuries, he doesn't miss very much time. He misses some time in games, hurts his foot, tweaks it, comes back later. But bottom line is I know there's some people around the league who are very concerned about his injury history coming out of Alabama. And look, it's worked out. Give Howie credit. I mean, with ACL and all the knee problems, they took a risk. And it's paid off. That's a really good job of evaluation. Obviously, their medical staff, you got to give whoever did the evaluations for that.
Yeah.
Obviously gave them the thumbs up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. So Dickerson in the fold. And then the other three extensions, all the special teamers, Rick Lovato, Braden Mann, Jake Elliott. Elliott becomes, I believe, tied for the highest paid kicker with Justin Tucker ever, right? At the 24 million mark.
Yep. 4 years, $6 million here for a kicker. Jake Elliott, you got to give Tyler Brown credit, who's the specialist coach, and obviously Michael Clay for it. Look, he had some struggles, before they came in 21. And as we noted 3 years ago, what we had heard is the operation from Lovato to the holder to the kicker improved greatly, and the timing was greater. And he has been the best 50-yard plus kicker in the National Football League, I believe, over the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I don't have it in front of me, but looking up some stats, it's crazy how great he's been. What do they call Money Jake or whatever the hell
Jake the Make.
Jake the Make, right. He's phenomenal. I mean, Braden Mann, what a find he was. Like that, and good for the Eagles to not trade for him. Remember, we'd put out there that the Steelers and Eagles were having a stare down whether the Steelers would cut Mann, and they're sort of like they knew the Eagles wanted him and they didn't do it, and then later it happened. Then the Eagles signed him to their practice squad and elevated him, and the rest is history. Good story.
Yeah, great story. All right, 5 additions to the defensive side in the football of the football. We're going to talk about that in a second. First, whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. Say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you'll love, delivered right to your door. So you've resolved to actually sit down and eat dinner around the table. What do you do about those nights when your schedule is jam-packed? That's when you turn to HelloFresh's lineup of quick and easy meals, which includes their 15-minute recipes. They're designed to help minimize mealtime stress. Every time we eat a HelloFresh meal, whether it's quick and easy or it takes a little longer, we're just blown away by the freshness, the taste, and the overall quality. So many great options to try. You can have chicken meals, you can have steak meals, you can have seafood meals, vegetarian meals, so many great different combinations of things to eat at HelloFresh. And now they have an even better deal. If you go to HelloFresh.com/EaglesFree and use the code Eagles free. You get free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. Free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/Eagles free. Using the code Eagles free. It's all one word, lowercase EAGLESFREE. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, you're probably going to hear a lot of EAGLES this year, and at Eagles games, and they're going to be, I would imagine fans will be a little bit more excited about the defense. Still some things left to go. Obviously, Bryce Huff here on the 3-year, $51 million deal that we talked about. And Adam, in a shocking turn of events, Josh Sweat comes back to the Eagles. We did talk about this last pod, I believe, but it almost seems a little similar to the Darius Slay ordeal last year. Very, very similar, except he's not getting a long-term deal. This will very likely be his last year as an Eagle.
All right, so Sweaty was owed $60 million in cash, and they cut him down significantly to $10 million. But what they did was, and I'll explain why they did this. It's one thing to cut the guy's pay, and he has to agree to it, by the way. Of course, if he doesn't, typically, if you don't agree to it and the club wants to do it, they're going to cut the player. That's usually the way it works. But nevertheless, so I'm not saying they did this to make him happy, but because it was out there, not just us reporting it, like every outlet said, like, look, they were in trade talks, could be cut, who knows? As you said with Slay, they told Slay they were going to cut him. 5 hours later, they extended his contract and gave him more guaranteed money. So with Sweat, they cut his cash, but they fully guaranteed the $10 million. That alleviates him being cut, and B, it gives him peace of mind that they're not going to hold this over him. Because that if you know that you're being shopped and you could potentially be cut, that's just not cool. Look, I get that that's business, but I couldn't imagine being in his shoes.
Right.
And I guess he was it on IG or Twitter or whatever. He said, what did he say? He was.
I'll miss you. I'll miss everyone.
Yeah, there you go. So
he thought he was gone.
Yeah. So bottom line is that this is good. Now I know he did not do well. I talked to Cosell last week. Greg had a little bit more on his tape than he had talked to us about. I guess maybe he went back. I don't know. He just had very strong comments about Sweat's tape in the second half of the season, which he only goes by the tape. He has no idea why Josh struggled so much. We put this on a show last Monday. As one source said, he looked like he was going for sacks. And by the way, there were a lot of players who just did not play with a lot of discipline. This is completely different from what we've seen from Sweat throughout his career. So, hey, the Eagles put him on the trade block, and they wound up not doing it, and they brought him back. I hope Josh is humbled by this. Yeah, $10 million is a lot of money, but it's not $16 million. So we'll see how he does. I mean, but again, he was on the last year of his deal. Now he's still on a last year of his deal. Mm-hmm. So he's got to prove himself. And the guy's a very good all-around player. It's been a great story of development, but that was an absolute nightmare. If you want to know why the Eagles, people will say, well, what happened to the Eagles defense? Why did the team lose 6 out of 7? This is one of the reasons. When players are not playing the way they're supposed to, and you can't just blame everything on coaching. Plenty of it is well put to the coaches, but players have their own role here. So here we go. He's back.
He is back. Now, doesn't this indicate that Slay came back for more money, more guaranteed money?
Yeah.
That indicated to me that meant when they gave him permission to find somebody else, there was probably somebody else who would have paid him that money, which is why the Eagles did it. With
Ravens.
Right.
Yeah, he said it on the show.
That's right. We reported that. Yeah. So with Sweat, you have to feel the opposite. The reason he comes back and takes less money is because that there was not going to be a payday out there for him, because people saw the same tape that Cosell and the Eagles saw. They saw what the player looked like over the last 2 months of the season, basically, and they know his history. Everybody's got their scouting reports. They go back, they check it out. I'm sure they know about the knee and everything from high school. I mean, most times a pass rusher with his kind of production is going to figure out a way to get money on the open market. But because his drop off was so steep, and the Eagles, maybe they hope they can, that was somewhat of an aberration. Maybe they plan to play him less snaps next year. But clearly they won the negotiation in that regard by being able to retain him, but at a far less cash money value.
Although here's the one thing I would say, he may have had another deal or two out there for him had he been released. Because they didn't need to fully guarantee him 10 million. They had leverage, you know? I mean,
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, I just thought the number. I'm very curious. We haven't gotten the breakdown yet. I'm very curious about what this looks like and how they did it.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, look, we'll see. He's still very young. He turns just 27. It seems like he's been in the league forever.
It does. It really does.
So we'll see. We'll see if he could rebound here, and he turns just 27 in a week from now. So about a week and a half from now. So we'll see how he does.
So if he stays, he's a starting edge player. The other edge player, or Sam, in this regard, do you believe that is Bryce Huff right away, or Huff and Nolan Smith kind of split at 50-50? I mean, you're paying Bryce Huff a lot of money. I would think that you're going to want him to be out there, first team.
He has to be.
But at the same time, he's not exactly known as a great run defender. Not that anybody else would be if they put him. Not that Nolan Smith is either. Just an interesting situation that the Eagles have here.
Well, they could put one guy on. Now again, Reddick is still on the roster, so that's another quagmire here. Is are they going to trade him or not? Because Sweat's got to play. Assuming I'm putting an asterisk on Sweat not being traded. Like it, you don't do it like typically. You just don't address a contract like this and not keep him. Never say never. Of course, you could be traded, but you don't typically go through all this and trade the player. It's just not. It's extremely rarely. It's an extreme rarity that you would trade a player after doing something like this. But as we've learned with this team, never say never. Strange. We will always, it's the history of this show. We'll always use the slay, telling him he's going to be cut. Later in the day, sign him to an extension. Like you just can't make that up.
You cannot.
That was strange. So Huff's got to start. He's still 17 million a year. They're telling you he has to start. There's no debate here. He's got to start. Not a sub-package player like he was with the Jets.
Right.
And Sweat's got to play. And Reddick, if he's on the season on the team, he's got to play. Now, it would be nice if they keep Reddick, which doesn't seem likely, but if he is here, I say it doesn't seem likely. How do you make everybody happy? They all got to play. Now, the upside is you have an incredible rotation like you had during the Super Bowl year in 17. You got Reddick, you got Sweat, you got Huff, BG in his limited role, and you got Nolan Smith, who's got now he's a former first round pick. I know he barely played. You got to justify the pick, so he's got to play. So how could Reddick be on the team this season?
That's a great question. That's something we have to figure out.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how this thing plays out. Yeah. All right, let's go to linebacker. There's an expression, two things can be true at the same time. And I think that applies to their one-year deal with Devin White, the former Super Bowl champion linebacker of the Bucks, 5th overall pick from 2018. I want to say 19, sorry. 5th overall pick. Two things can be true at the same time. One, I feel like it's a smart signing, right? You need a player at that position, and you're only getting into 1 year with him. It's not a whole lot. He's a great athlete. We'll get into the scouting report on him in a second. But two, it's not a good scheme fit. It's just not. And, there's some resistance to this thought process that I've put on Twitter. Other people have that, well, Vic Fangio signed off on it, so it must be a good scheme fit because Vic knows what he's doing. No, that doesn't mean it's a good scheme fit. They needed linebackers. They signed a bunch of them. He happens to be one of them. So I think from a value standpoint, okay, only 1 year, my great traits, take a chance. But I have a lot of skepticism about whether this is going to work out based on, you and I and our talks with various, personnel sources on him and what we know of that defense in general, and how he played in it versus how he would play for a Vic Fangio style defense. So what is your initial thought on it?
Well, I looked into it. The regression started 2 years ago. Wasn't quite as steep as last year. That's why they didn't extend his contract. That's why they just rolled over the 5th-year option, didn't extend him. And they didn't offer him a chance to come back. I mean, his tape last season, I heard was. I'm very interested to see what Greg says when we do the show this week with him. Greg does, as you know, he doesn't mince any words. He only goes by what the tape tells him. Yeah. And Jason Light's drafted really well in recent years, really several years, to be honest with you. But this is a guy that was terrific. Really, his first 3 years were pretty good. Second team All-Pro 1 year, Pro Bowler. And then, the word was around the league is like he goes for the kill shot, the big play, overruns plays, and it should see what else you got here. But I don't know. We'll have to see what kind of discipline he can play with because I've talked to coaches that work with Vic before, and they don't really see his scheme the way he does. They all sort of run their version of it, or they coach a different version of it. But as far I have not really asked about the discipline part of it because man, White was just so undisciplined.
Yeah.
On the field, I'm going to talk about off it, just
Yeah.
on the field about being where you're supposed to, not going for the big play. So, what have you heard about this
All right.
situation?
So I spoke to a couple people, but I want to go with two different sources. One's a personnel source who
Yeah.
does a lot of NFC South, and he had a lot of report on the Bucks and Devin White, right? And the other one's a guy who's both played and coached defense. So let's start with the personnel source, who has seen a lot of Devin White. He described him as, quote, an undisciplined player that is constantly out of position and blowing his assignment.
Oof.
When he is on, he can be a great player, but really struggles to just play assignment football. Will make some wow plays because of that athletic ability, but gives up just as many, if not more.
Ooh.
So that's obviously not a great endorsement of him. It basically summarizes that he is a unbelievable athlete, which is why he was the 5th overall pick. I mean, Nakobe Dean's a good athlete. This guy is a supreme athlete. And that will actually, the player and coach source says he's very curious to see which one becomes the Mike and which one becomes the Will, because, they're both similarly built, but Devin's more athletic, but he misses a lot more. He's much less fundamentally sound than Nakobe, but if Nakobe's, you might want Nakobe as your Mike for that reason, because he's smarter and assignment sound, but he's also less durable, right? He's gotten hurt a lot, whereas Devin White hasn't. So it's going to be very fascinating to see how this all works out. But to your point, yes, he played much better earlier in his career, right? And then he regressed. And I know in his second or third year at him, he had 9 sacks.
Incredible for an off-the-ball linebacker.
Right. But he's playing for Todd Bowles, a blitzing everybody, including my linebacker. So when people say, I trust Vic will figure it out, Vic signed off on it. Vic's scheme has not called for a whole lot of blitzing from your middle linebacker, your stack linebackers. And the Eagles in general haven't done that, and they don't really always bring in players. And the other linebackers they brought in aren't known for blitzing. So it's not like they're just changing their philosophy here. So I would, when I tweeted that this is a little bit of a scheme fit, I got some blowback on it, and it is. I mean, Vic Fangio's defenses have always been built on discipline, knowing where you're going to be. You're playing a lot of zone. You're playing quarters coverage. You're playing cover 3. Your linebackers have to drop. They have to be able to carry the 3 for a while, but not just carry the 3, meaning the interior receiver. But if that guy puts a move on, you got to be able to stick with him. You need to understand route patterns. If you're playing match, carry, deliver, which the Eagles have been doing for years, and now they're about to do it even more with Vic. You've got to know when it's guys getting carried to you and match. Like, if you're not spatially aware, if you're just all twitched up and athletic, but you don't have a good football IQ, this is not necessarily the defense that you're going to excel in. And by the way, it's a 1-year deal. No, people who are assuming Vic just signed off on this and this was Vic's thing, Vic might cut this guy at the end of camp saying
you mean he's,
well, you know what I mean, but yes, like Howie might cut this guy and Vic might be fine with it because he might realize this guy can't play in my defense.
We'll see. Look. Obviously, they're going to pencil in White and Dean to start. That's obvious. Now the question is, on your point, if it doesn't look right and he's not where he's supposed to be, yeah, I mean, we have to see the guarantee. We haven't got the breakdown yet. I'll be interested. The contract will tell. Look, if I guess it was reported over 7 million, up to 7 million, which obviously the money's less than that. Yes. But if the guarantee is at least 5 million, the chance of being cut are slim to none, no matter how he performs. But if the guarantee is only like 2 million, oops, you better perform. So we'll see. The contracts tell you a lot.
Yep.
The guy's got a lot of gifts, and one thing we've learned as we've done the show for so many years is sometimes a change of scenery, a guy gets humbled. Sometimes the guy goes, "Okay, I got to get my bleep together." And who knows? Look, The story of the free agent class is a lot of upside, a lot of questions. That's probably the way I sum up these 9 players so far that have been acquired is scheme fit and not really some injury history, not too bad. But it's just okay. What does this look like? What does Barkley have left? He still looks good, but can he get back to where he was some years ago? What does Devontae Parker have? Can they rehab Kenny Pickett? Can they get him back to being a player that some people like, not as a first round pick, but whatever, second or third round pick? Could Devin White get back to where he was 3 years ago when he was an absolute stud? I mean, like you said, when the Bucks took him 5th overall, now the hype machine was there for him, top 10 pick. They took him 5th overall. It sure as hell looked like they were right for 3 years. That's the thing, and he's still only 26. So let's see. I'm not throwing in the towel here. Let's just see how it goes. Let's see. They have a new coaching staff on defense, completely different. With Vic coming in here running his Fangio scheme, and we'll see what he can do. I'm interested to see what this looks like with him.
Yeah, and listen, that's why the 1-year deal, and we'll see what the numbers really are. Make it understandable and worthwhile. You might stumble across something that's happened before, but I just feel like there are so many similarities in how last year they went out and signed Terrell Edmonds, a safety who was known, a first-round pick, twitched up, great athlete, but similar in that not great football IQ and not what you wanted. Plus, he had never played in a Vic Fangio style scheme. And now he was coming to the Eagles under Sean Desai and trying to do a lot of what we see done, and it just didn't work. I mean, the guy didn't even become a starter, right? I mean, by the season opener, he was already just special teams. They had Justin Evans ahead of him on the depth chart, Reed Blankenship ahead of him on the depth chart. So I just see that sort of a pathway where this could be similar, where people see the name, they see the first round pedigree, they get excited, but it may not work out the way you think of it. And there's no reason to sort of go overboard to defend it. No, this is going to be great. You guys don't know what you're talking. No, it may not work out. Just because a defensive coordinator signed off last year on the idea of Terrell Edmonds and how he made it happen doesn't mean it was going to work out.
I mean, we warned people. We got blowback for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't want to say told us. No, we're just, look, the guy was severely overdrafted Edmonds. There's a reason why nobody really wanted him. Nice guy, but look, that was a patchwork move. The safety was a patchwork move last year after they didn't get Gardner-Johnson, we'll talk about in a minute. But this year, the off-the-ball linebacker, they're going with quantity right now. We'll see about the quality. And just we'll get into the other guys, but just to clear stuff up, nothing they've done in free agency will impact the draft whatsoever. Remember, folks, the draft is about future needs. The free agency is about current needs with an asterisk. Most are just about this year, next year. There aren't a lot of situations. Now, the A.J. Brown was acquired in a trade. It's very rare you could sign a free agent that's going to work for 3, 4, 5 years. Now, if they don't trade Reddick, that sure as hell would work. It was obviously a great signing, incredible signing. But most free agent signings don't last very long. There's a reason why guys are not brought back by their former team. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll add to that. It's funny how things. And listen, biases for fans, even media, are always there. But like, if the Cowboys had signed Devin White, everybody, Eagles fans who are like saying no, it's gonna work for the Eagles would be like, nah, you're getting a guy who's on the downside. You know how it is, right? Because it's the Eagle, you're sort of giving it more defense. But if Devin White had been an Eagle and had the same exact career, meaning like started off good but then regressed each year after, like, I don't know, Derek Barnett or Carson Wentz or Nelson Aguilar, nobody would be thrilled about any of those guys being brought back on a 1-year deal, right? But because it's somebody else's guy, it seems like there's more of a, all right, this will work type of mentality.
Well, Barnett never played the level that White did early in his career. I mean, Barnett was just an average player at best.
No, his rookie year, he was good. Go look at
Not like this. Not
like, oh, no. Come on.
Devin White was a second team All-Pro. What are you talking about? Devin White was a second team All-Pro his second year.
He was second team All-Pro? All right, yes, that's fair. Then. But Derek Barnett looked like an ascending first-round pick his year one. He was a situational pass rusher. He was getting sacks and pressures. He had a huge one in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Or the NFC Championship game. My only point is when you start to regress, though, like you want these guys out. Like you can't wait to get them out. They couldn't wait to get rid of Barnett and Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar had a great Super Bowl
season. Still playing.
Right. And he's still playing. But if you had told the Eagles you're going to bring him back one more year, they would Eagles fans were like, no, I
Yeah,
remember
exactly. I
after.
get it.
Remember when he had to play the outside and he dropped everything in sight, and
Yeah.
the offense
Well,
went.
that was also his when he was dealing with something off the field, which we won't get into.
No. This is way down. This is after. This is after the Super Bowl year, right? He wasn't dealing with it by then.
Okay, but he was
This is.
phenomenal. In fact, he got a monster contract, if you remember,
Mhm.
10 million a year, I think, with the Raiders.
Right. I remember everybody was shocked by that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the free agency, as you said earlier, and we'll move on here. It only takes one team. You scratch your, and I'll never fault an agent or a player for getting a great deal. That's not their problem. It's the
Mhm.
club's problem to misevaluate. I mean, Tennessee's spending money like there's no tomorrow. They're not a team that typically spends. It's just interesting. This free agency, they're always wild.
Mhm.
This has been one of my favorites. I got to tell you, this has been like a lot of craziness around the NFL.
Yes, and you are absolutely right about White being a better player than Barnett. I got a little carried away there. Yeah. All right. So the Eagles did not stop there at they had Zach Baun, they brought in Devin White, but they also brought in a guy that we had talked about in our free agency preview podcast about a week or a week and a half ago now, at linebacker, Oren Burks from the 49ers, which we said the Eagles were interested in him. And I think we specifically said if it were to happen, it was probably going to be a second or third wave type of signing, which it wound up being. But I kind of like Warren Burks, Adam. I feel like he's a guy who's, I don't call him underrated, but obviously they bring him in as backup and special teams. But he's a guy who's 230, 6'3", played for a tenacious defense there in San Francisco, had some opportunities where he had to step in and play for the 49ers, has generally played, held the fort down. I like Oren Burks as a signing, as a depth piece.
Yeah, and people are crushing him because he had to fill in for Greenlaw in the Super
That was
Bowl. I
tough.
mean,
Yeah.
that's t I mean, in social media, there's absolutely no context. And I don't get into these arguments or a lot of 49er fans were killing him over what happened. First of all, you don't take first team reps in practice if you're a backup normally. And to be ready, this is a sudden change. And obviously, it was very emotional if you saw the NFL film video when Greenlaw tore his Achilles, running him on the field. It's just no way you could prepare for that. So, again, context is everything. You got to be careful of crushing a player like that. He's been around. He started some for Green Bay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a depth signing, is what it is.
Yep.
And as you said, he could play special teams. He's been around. He's 29 years old, and he's just part of the group here. They're going with this. He projects to be a backup, and we'll see. I mean, he's a guy's been around a long time, as you said, with the Packers and the Niners here. Now with the Eagles. It's funny you say second wave. The second wave used to be the week after, sometimes 2 weeks.
No,
Not anymore. It's like
not anymore. Yeah.
Who didn't the Eagles sign Penny like the second day or first day last
Yeah.
year?
I think on the first day last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And Nick Morrow.
Right out of the blue. Like so we can't say anymore that, oh yeah, well that he's a down the line guy. I don't know about that anymore. And
Yeah.
free agency
Yeah.
picked
Because they
over.
dry up quickly. Adam, what I like about Oren is, and this is the second year in a row they're doing this, which is a little bit of a deviation, 6'3", which is, I believe, what Zach
Oh,
Cunningham is,
yeah.
6'3". I mean, this is not. We raved about how last year, right, how Zach Cunningham looked like a literal NBA center for an Eagles linebacker because he's 6'3". Usually Eagles linebackers are like 5'11", 6 foot, maybe 6'1". So Zach Cunningham looked like a tree, like a big sequoia compared to everybody else. And Oren Burks will look the same way. I think White is 6 foot and Nakobe's what, 6 foot, 6'1", maybe. Nah, he's probably like 6 feet. So I like that they decided to go with a little bit of height and length there at the position suddenly.
Yeah, and remember that they brought Mack in and Zach Cunningham the same day. Both had length. And by the way, Cunningham was on their list. Like what we're told is they had interest in bringing him back. But here's the thing: if I'm Zach Cunningham, you, Dean Dean's got to start here, and so does White. So you would just be a backup here. I mean, they could technically say they're opening up the competition if they sign Cunningham. They didn't sign White to be a bench player, and obviously Nakobe if healthy. And as our Ender Ducheco said, he's supposed to be ready by the spring, whenever their workouts are done, coming off the Lisfranc injury. So yeah, and they've got Van Sumeren, who did flash at one game against the Giants. They got Zach Baun, who our understanding is he should play inside or outside. But Cosell said when I talked to Greg last week, He's had very few snaps inside. He's barely played on defense anyway. He's been mostly special teams player. That was when they signed him, I was kind of hopeful that he would get a shot to get a lot of snaps, but I don't know right now. I mean, again, Dean and White starting, I don't see them rotating much if at all. So and he's not much of an edge rusher, so I don't quite see what he'll do other than special teams right now.
Yeah, watch just like watch Zach Bowen be that one thing that we couldn't see happening. He winds up going in there and balls out or something like that. Something that we could have never seen
Unless
coming.
someone gets, if they don't get hurt, see if you look at his I mean, snaps on defense are so low. In fact, he played a career high 301 snaps, but he still on defense. He still played 385 on specials.
Mm.
He's one of their highest percentage special teams players the last 2 years, 81% and 83. So he's probably just going to play special teams, and he's really good at it. So it was a bargain basement signing anyway. But hey, look, the guy is he's a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
He was a former third round pick for the Saints. He just never really got a shot, and we'll see if he could push a little bit in training camp.
Yeah, we will see. All right, it's at very least pretty interesting to watch this linebacker group. You have Nakobe coming back. You've got Devin White with all the twitched up, and the athleticism is going to be. That's always fun in OTAs and training camp. And then Oren Burks with his length. Zach Bowen comes in, and Ben Van Sumeren, another highly athletic guy who will get a look there in the OTAs and camp.
Yeah,
we don't often say that linebackers are fun to watch with the Eagles, but this is a situation we did. And I think we should just finish off that conversation by I would not rule out the Eagles still being in on a linebacker in the draft. Not first round, we know that, but maybe day two. I just wouldn't be surprised because no matter what we say about all these names, most of them are just 1-year deals. And Nakobe is about to enter year 3 and hasn't stayed healthy. So they need building blocks at that position.
Think about it. White, 1-year deal. Bond, 1-year deal. Burks, 1-year deal. Nakobe Dean in his 3rd year was 4-year deal. He played very little on defense because he's been hurt for his first 2 seasons. So yeah, absolutely. They could, yeah, wouldn't, in fact, again, none of these signings affect the future at all at off the ball linebacker. The draft is always, folks think, especially you mock drafters like me, it's always about the future. 25% of a guy's year is his first year on a 4-year deal. So obviously, and after year 1 is 70, you got 75% left on a 4-year deal of drafted players. It's always about the future. Whatever you get out of year 1 with these guys on 1-year deals is great. But I just like that at least you're going to have competition. Guys it should be pretty heated. I'm with you on this one. This should be a fun OTAs and training camp. Yes, Dean and White are expected to start, but let's see if anyone can be pushed here. We'll see what happens.
100%. All right, we'll finish it off. Obviously, CJ Gardner-Johnson agreed to the deal come back as a safety / nickel, 3-year, $33 million. Do we have the full details yet?
No, I don't have it.
So we're still waiting on that.
It's 11 APY, 11 million per season. It's what we understand. The early word is it's similar to last year's offer. Maybe the guarantee's higher, but we'll see with the structure. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see if he got any guaranteed money in year 2, because that, as I was told last year, was a big problem for him. But it's pretty cool. I don't know if you saw his press conference. He was really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy his energy. I know he's different. I've told the story about when I was at Lions camp and they were hosting the Jaguars, and how Peterson had to stop practice because he told him to be quiet because he was disruptive. He's hilarious, and he owns his own. He's a gamer. He owns his own gamer company. So I just like what I like what he had to say. I don't know. I'd say he's a good trade, but he explained where he was at last year and how he went through what happened last year, and he is absolutely right. Coming back from the injury, he was not supposed to come back. He came back with a torn pectoral muscle, like way earlier than he was supposed to. And he's a gamer, man. He's a tough guy. Give him credit. I know he's had 2 big injuries past 2 years, and remember the lacerated kidney 2 years ago. But he's a terrific football player. As some people have told us, you can't really teach what he does, his ability to track the football. Something we've not seen before with any defensive back, quite frankly. He's just special at it. And we will see how they deploy him. We'll see what they do at the safety position, because they still have some work to do on it, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll see what they do go in these next few days. We'll finish out the defense. Brandon Graham, we know, re-signed a year, $4 million. That's $4 million fully guaranteed for Brandon Graham. Yep. And that finishes out the extensions and the contracts and the additions on defense for the Eagles. So in a second, we'll go through what we see as the Eagles' remaining needs here as we get into. Would you call this now the third wave that we're about to get into a free agency, or are we
Yeah.
still in the second wave?
Well, our good friend Bill Polian, this is one of his favorite lines. This is like such a great line. First week, you generally pay Neiman Marcus prices. Second week, Filing's basement,
Uh-huh.
which is now not in business anymore, but Filing's is like Marshall's
Sure,
anyway.
sure.
So yeah, and because agents will tell you, although there's a lot more money in free agency this year because the cap went way up and cash spend has been up for a lot of clubs. It's always about cash first, cap second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the numbers are going to come down here now. There's still some decent free agents. Almost every big name goes within the first 2 days that happened. It's business as usual. Now there's some players who were cut who are still available, but the bottom line is some major contracts have been given out, but there still are some safeties out there. There's some decent. It was a very deep market. It was certainly a buyer's market at safety.
Definitely. It still is. Still is. A lot of names out there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You will get a great deal. Also want to throw in a little shout out. Nice. Appreciate the people at Fienni's Italian restaurant in, I want to call it Somerdale. It might be Voorhees, New Jersey, Somerdale, right near the Echelon Wall. Had some dinner there the other night with my wife. We were recognized, big Eagles fans, and
Nice.
the staff was nice enough to send something to our table. So that was
Wow, that's pretty cool.
yeah. Let me tell you,
You're
it's our favorite restaurant. It's a great.
Did you sign the napkin?
I did not sign the napkin. I was not asked to sign that. There was probably too much garlic and crap from my mouth on the napkin.
Get me hungry, brother. Oh man, I love garlic bread. Anyway.
But
Nice.
this is a cool restaurant. It looks like a house. It's like built into what looks like a normal house. You wouldn't know it was a restaurant unless the sign wasn't outside.
What's it called again?
Fienni's, Fieni apostrophe.
Fienni's. Okay, I'll remember.
Fienni's, great.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, excellent. And we really appreciate their service. All right. The remaining needs for the Eagles. Well, hard to believe, but we talked about this a little bit after the Barkley thing. Maybe a running back still. Just one more guy.
By training camp, yeah. Need one more.
For training. It won't be a huge name. Doesn't have to be could be a guy they draft, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They don't it's not necessary to do anything until training camp. They can do it anytime they want. Still need two more receivers. You need number 4 and number 5.
Yep.
Now, if they wait till training camp and they see these kids, if they see Austin Watkins balling out in OTAs, or Joseph Ngata take another step, or Jacob Harris who's a guy they're very intrigued with, is a big time athlete. Remember, they gave some of these guys decent guarantees. So we have to see what happens here. But again, by the time training camp starts, they need a number 4 and number 5. And then they lost Jack Stoll. He was actually close to coming back to the Eagles, as we understand it. The Giants jumped in. And they gave him a pretty good opportunity. They kind of sold him on it. So they are down at tight end. They need the only wide tight end they have is Noah Tungiai, who's been on and off the roster I don't know how many times. So it's Calcaterra, who's he hasn't really contributed much. Alberto, who they brought back for a year. EJ Jenkins, who they give a little bit of money, a little bit of guaranteed. Of course, Goddard. And Goddard is getting up there. He turns 30 in January. Where's the time gone? So my sense is if they drafted a tight end, that guy would be able to block. I don't know if I don't see them going with just an athlete. They really need someone who can block and to help Dallas out, because he's, with his injury history, it's a problem when he's gotten hurt. I mean, obviously the offense suffers from both pass catching and blocking. So I could certainly see them with whatever picks they have left drafting a tight end.
I double dog dare Howie Roseman to trade up for Brock Bowers just for the content.
Oh,
I want the content, baby.
Oh my God. I will literally, as much as I was in shock and I didn't even know what to say when they drafted Hurts, I literally fell off my chair. Literally, I was leaning back and I looked back, well, what? When you don't expect something and it's something so big. And this is what I love about Howie. just when you think you figured him out, he does something completely different,
Mm-hmm.
which has really been a secret sauce to his success. They don't look at it the way everybody else does, but I, and there's only going to be one tight end. Bowers will be the guy, but he's not going to make it 22. This is not going to
No,
happen.
he's
He'll
not.
go.
That's right. Yeah, trade up. Yeah.
Yeah, I got him in my mock draft for ProFootballNetwork.com. I keep giving him to Cincinnati because they need a tight end. I know they signed an athletic tight end, the kid from Penn State. What's the kid's name? Was from Miami? Gesicki, I think.
Oh, Mike Gesicki. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not going to stop them. He's on a 1-year deal, and he's been an underachiever. But
Right.
getting back to it, yeah. So the Eagles need to add a tight end, and Giants got him after they found out that he wasn't tendered and
Yeah.
signed him to a 1-year deal with a
They also
guarantee.
lost Darren Waller to retirement, which was
Not yet. It's not official. I mean, the word is that he's strongly considering it. He cannot get over the hamstring problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if he even if he but see the thing is though even if he doesn't retire, all they really have is Daniel Bellinger as decent tight end. And now they did sign. Maybe he didn't know this. Chris Manhurts is one of the best wide tight ends in the NFL. An old friend, Tyree Jackson.
Tyree Jackson. How about that? What happened to old friend Chris Myrick? Where is he these days?
He was not brought back. Yeah, from Cheltenham High School. Yeah.
Oh, hopefully he latches on with somebody.
Temple.
Good dude. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So on defense, what's left? We've talked about defensive tackle. Very young here. Could use a veteran. It's probably a guy who will come in the, I don't know, 50th wave of free agency, whatever it is. 1-year deal type of veteran guy. But still, corners. I keep being told there's work to be done here at corner. So what's the free agent landscape look like at corner? Because we've talked all this time about how bad the landscape is.
All right. Here's who is left. Xavier Howard, who got cut, who turns 31, coming off a major injury last season. Tre'Davious White coming off his second major injury. Let's see. Stephon Gilmore.
Stephon Gilmore. That's a pretty good name. If I were the Eagles, the other two guys you mentioned have injury history. And I get it. The Eagles may feel like they've got their starters, but I mean, isn't a guy like Gilmore way better than James Bradbury?
Of course. And he has, I know he's older, but Gilmore is really, really good. He's sort of an anomaly. You don't see guys play this well into their 30s, but he's still good. And he's better in man than zone. And I know Vic played a little bit more man than he usually does, but he's still the zone guy. Adoree Jackson, who the Eagles, actually, Dory went on the record saying that they pursued him before he went back to the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Teron John, no, he's still with Baltimore. Excuse me, with Buffalo. Christian Fulton, who Greg Cosell told us last week, 2 weeks ago, not coming off a good year. That's the outside corner. Akella Witherspoon, who kind of revived his career, but he's been on for 4 or 5 teams. Yeah. J.C. Jackson, who was cut, his career's completely cratered. Levi Wallace is better in nickel. Rocky Yassin is out there. Has never been the player that most people thought he would be. And then a bunch there, C.J. Henderson, who's a better third corner than second. A lot of nickels. There are about 7 or 8 nickels out there. And actually, I'm looking at my list. Holy smokes, there actually be like 12 of them. So,
yeah, I remember us talking about how many nickels there were out there.
Crazy, yeah. Not many have signed. That's the one thing that's not been picked over. Typically, it's picked over. Gilmore is so good. I know he's 33, and I know the Cowboys had interest in bringing him back, I was told. But the dude is a winner, man. And, boy, he's a guy that is still out there, surprisingly. I thought he'd come back.
Yeah, that kind of helps for teams that don't want to pay a high price for a guy who still can play pretty well. So,
Yep.
I still think cornerback is an area that's going to get an up.
They have to. They need 2 guys, man. They need. I know that all of the Ringos of the world and Mario Goodrich and Eli Ricks was a nice story. They're backups. They're not seen as future starters. Zach McPherson's coming back from the torn Achilles. What we were told is they wanted to start cross-training the nickel, then he got hurt towards Achilles. So the backups have pretty significant question marks. Yes, they got precedent service and showed that they could stay on the roster and contribute a little bit, but they're not seen as future starters.
Right.
So they really, by training camp, need to add 2 outside guys. Safety, they still need players. Sidney Brown coming back from a major injury. We'll see if he's ready for week 1. McCollum's a forced safety. Blankenship, they clearly don't want starting if it works out. It's Gardner-Johnson right now in Blankenship, but for the future, Reed would be a better third. So they need at least 1 and probably 2 by the start of the season.
Yeah, and I would still say Julian Blackman is the name to watch. He's still a
Yeah.
free agent. He has
Yep.
that tie to Nick Sirianni because he's a former Colt. Spent his whole career so far with the Colts.
Yep.
Right. And again, as we get deeper into free agency, with still several safeties out there, you got to think, because it's a buyer's market, teams can get guys at the price that they're looking to get, and they'll just wait it out.
Justin Simmons is one. I mean, he's been on their list, but the question is, at 31 years old, what are the Eagles or any other team willing to pay him? The other safeties that are out there before we get out of here: Micah Hyde, Diggs, who was cut by the Seahawks, Jaron Kearse, who's kind of the tight end guy, who's really tall, one of the tallest safeties in the NFL. Tashawn Gibson, I know the Niners have interest in bringing him back. He's well into his 30s. Eddie Jackson is still out there, clearly near the end. He's, in fact, the best ball he played with for Fangio. Kareem Jackson's out there, mid-30s. Adrian Amos, also in his 30s, former Penn State. Or John Johnson, we'll see if he's actually only 28. The Eagles liked him that year that he signed the big deal, the original deal, for free agency. Ryan Neal, former Eagle, is out there. Your guy, Terrell Edmonds. Mike Edwards, who had a good year for the Chiefs.
My guy, Terrell Edmonds.
I know.
You're a joker, are you?
I know. I had to throw that in there. I remember his dad, though, Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah.
Tight end. And then Tracy Walker was cut, who once was a stud safety for the Lions and suffered a big injury, and then he's never been the same. Nick Scott was cut. I mean, you look at the Keon Cross, you look at these, they're as you said, it's a buyer's market. They don't have to do anything. Eagles are doing a smart thing here by waiting. They'll get one or two guys.
Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me to see Dan Quinn try to pry Jaron Kearse as the I mean, he succeeded so well in that 3 safety alignment in Dallas. So that would be a name to watch.
I cannot believe that Cam Curl, as we reported last Monday, the Eagles were not interested in him. I
don't get it.
And he signed with the Rams, and they got a value signing with him. I mean, if you look at, on your point, if you look at what the Panthers, the Commandos did, they signed Jeremy Chin, who could be a third safety. Percy Butler and Derek Forrest are going to be the starters as of now. They could add more. They probably need to.
Mm-hmm.
Man, walking away from Cam Curl, we're told they didn't even make him an offer.
Crazy.
Washington to come back.
I mean, the guy played in the NFC East, and the Eagles could use a safety. Dallas could use one if they're going to lose Jaron Kearse, and no offers. But that's why I felt like the Rams are having this really sneaky good offseason.
Yep.
And then he retired. Aaron Donald retired. Which is a bummer, man. I love watching Aaron Donald.
Can I tell you something? Watching him in practice. I've been going to training camps since 2005. Well, not just Eagles since 2005. I mean, I started my tours in 2005. He's the best defensive player I've ever seen up close at practice. I mean, his hand usage, if you're watching me like this, it's insane. His effort, his explosion, even in practice, they're double teaming him. It's because he ruins the play, blows plays up. It's
270 pounds, Adam. Like he's one of the smallest guys at that position, and just unbelievable.
Did you say 270? He had to be bigger than that.
No, when he got into the league, I think he was 270.
I don't know what he was when he came in, but that's a big loss for them. Don't underestimate it. I know Kobe Turner was incredible. He was a third rounder last year, but that's obviously a major deal. So we'll see. But we look forward to talking to you guys again on Thursday. And who knows what's next for your Eagles.
Oh, yes. It'll be an interesting one, no doubt. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.